I know Reels are the sexy thing out right now, but there's so much more to Instagram, to taking the visual aspect, putting it all together. Tell a story before the person even has a moment to think if they want to watch it. You got to kind of deliver a lot of the context before the person even hits play or slides on the carousel. And that's really key. In a world today on Instagram, in literally a millisecond. And I'm using millisecond because that's how they're measuring plays. Play is actually considered 1 millisecond. And there are videos that don't even get that. We want to discuss and share 4 Instagram hooks that will help you stop the scroll. So people stop scrolling past your content and you can start increasing your views. I think we have a really interesting panel today because we come from different sectors of social media and graphic and photography. And I think we have a lot to share. What kind of Instagram hook has proven most successful to you during your content strategy? And how would you suggest others to use it?
Well, earlier when you mentioned this as the topic, I started to go through and think about like what a hook actually means to me. And I think for most of us, a hook is a sentence that catches somebody and makes them want to read more or find out more information. But in my photographer's mind, a hook can be very much visual as well. And so I think maybe this is a little too specific, but I think that having contextual imagery or video is a really awesome hook. It's a way to show someone what their life could be like with something, or what it could look like in their home if it's a product or something along those lines. So a good example of this would be like furniture sales. You'll usually see the first image on a website will be the furniture, the couch in a room, styled, looking beautiful, making you want it, making you interested in it. Then as you swipe more, you'll see the couch by itself on a white background. So it'll kind of, get in on like, okay, so this is how you could visualize it in your life. But here's what it actually looks like. Now that you're interested, let me show you the actual details. So I think visually that could also be a hook for a lot of people on Instagram, is let people see what their life could be like with something and then go into the details of that thing.
I'm really glad that you even mentioned the whole visual aspect. And I think that's where a lot of the differences between what we are all going to share really comes into mind, because you and Roger are very much visual artists. And I think a lot of people, especially when you hear hook on Instagram, you immediately think, oh, it might be something that you say or it might be something that you read, which isn't wrong, but I'm loving that perspective of what you bring in regards to the visual aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I wish I could have gone first, because that was my exact answer. Approaching.
Sorry.
I mean, that's just like how I approach social media, is through the lens of design anyways, right? And so I always think about, I love to read, and you see, like, you read a book and then it gets turned into a movie. And your brain, what's happening in your brain is so different with those experiences, because in the book, maybe they're describing the character, the main character, what their hair looks like, what they sound like, the location in which they live, the house in which they live. And they could take an entire page in the book to describe that for your brain to kind of put together this picture of what that looks like. But in a movie, that happens within 3 seconds. You get the visual, everything is done for you. And so I think the same is true with the way that we approach social media. So I went and looked at some of my stats and saw some of the engagement, looked at like Reels views, and I noticed that one of the things that was working for me was just a simple like, hey, here's how to, because I like to teach people how to make stuff or how to design stuff or use a certain technique within Canva. And so I kind of do both. So the hook is not sexy. It's here's how to. That's not a sexy hook. But I think that the reason it works is because in the first second, I'm showing you what we're about to make, right? So I'm saying, here's how to make this. And so they're watching that going, oh, well, now they want to stick around to see how you get that result. So I think like I like both. I like and there are some videos that I have where there's literally no text, and they performed well because the engagement of whatever was happening with the hook visually, with design, maybe it was a time lapse of me doing something, that was the hook. And that kept people engaged through the video. And then sometimes I'll try to use the caption as my hook if I don't have any text on the actual video, because I've noticed that will hook me in. Sometimes it takes you a level deeper in whatever that post is, and you get to see like maybe how witty that creator is, which is like, oh my goodness, it's like that little punchline that you need, but it's just one line in the caption. So I would say like, yeah, for me, they kind of work in tandem, that there's like the text, but then there's also the visual hook.
So what you're saying
Totally
is there doesn't necessarily need to be one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the ones that have worked the best are like combining, thinking through what the visual is in the first second, as well as what that hook is with the text.
I feel like that used to be a known thing that everyone was teaching. Now that's that first line in your caption. And I feel since we started saying add a hook on screen for reels, we forget about that part in the caption. And hearing from Roger, like sometimes it's that specific one-liner that will make him stop. Like it has nothing to do with the other part of the content. It's that one little line. And that's so valuable. So I really am so happy you said that, because I think too many people are forgetting about it, for sure. Which kind of goes into where my favorite hook style, I guess, adding some level of excitement or emotion in some way. And that really can be, if we're in a reel, it's a visual, if it's the imagery on a graphic, if it's a photo and it's how that styled or a person in it or whatever. Like there's an emotional excitement, curiosity. It's just something that humans relate to, right? It's why, where it piqued my interest, how, what, like those, here's how to do that. They care because they want that, and there's an emotional connection, there's an excitement, there's a curiosity. That's kind of broad. You can Google the best hooks all day long, and you're going to find specific examples. But if you personally can sit back and think how you want to use them or which ones you want to use, go for the ones that get you excited, that would stop your scroll. Start to pay attention to how you consume content, what makes you emotional pull. Like we have to start to question why we consume things and what makes us enjoy content. Then our content really takes off.
It's all storytelling in a matter of ways, where you take in, as Roger said, the visual and then the text, and you putting it together, but it tells one story in various ways. I've noticed that there are so many pieces of content on Instagram, whether it's just a photo or even a reel, that when you search for it and it comes across on Explorer, there's no title or anything. So I have no idea what that piece of content is before I click into it. And usually I just won't click into it because I'm not interested. It didn't captivate me. Or in other terms, it didn't hook me enough to actually watch the content. One of the things I take from YouTube is the algorithm works differently. Whereas on Instagram, they push content to you. YouTube, they selectively send content to you based on your interests, but you still have to click on those videos. Whereas on Instagram, we're scrolling and we're pretty much seeing everything. So I took that concept and I applied it to my own strategy. And I looked at how they do this on YouTube. And there's three things that I've noticed on YouTube, particularly with the titles. I want to make sure I get this correct. Is an optimized title. And what I mean by that is a clear and concise name to your content that accurately describes the context within. You're making a promise with the words that you choose in your title. And if you don't accurately satisfy that promise, the person is going to leave your content before they finish it. So you want to make sure you're choosing the right title. And three things that I've noticed on YouTube is that they apply to these titles is most times they try to keep them less than 7 words. Shorter context is a little bit better, especially when everybody's trying to scroll fast and capture what they see within a few milliseconds. Make text larger, because when you think about it from a thumbnail point of view, it's very hard to read if it's very small text. And the third most important thing in regards to titles is include a power term. And this works for the audience and the algorithm, because the words that you put on your title, I don't care what anybody says, Instagram is reading that. There's some form of algorithm that is reading the words on your title. And if you could tie a lot of those keywords that we use in our caption, maybe it's a word that we speak something, it all works well together, and it goes back to that storytelling. So those are the three things that I apply to my titles when I create them on Instagram, whether it's on a carousel cover image or a real cover image. I think titles are really important.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Explaining how you took the time to see what intrigued you on YouTube, kind of like what I was saying of like how we consume, for sure. But something that really stood out to me that I love that you brought up here was to have hooks not just on our reels, but in our stories. I just want to like shake people when I see them pop on their stories and they're like have their closed caption. I'm so excited that's there. That's awesome.
Yes.
We love that. That's good. But think about, people use stories just by tap, 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 tap. That's how they naturally go through a story. So you have to add a hook, and especially on a talking face to camera story. Like, what is that juicy part? What stops them? That was great. That's money tip right there.
Yes, kind of covered all four type of Instagram hooks that we utilize. Like we said, they don't just apply to Instagram Reels. I know Reels are the sexy thing out right now, but there's so much more to Instagram. Taking the visual aspect, like Roger and Gina was stating, and putting it all together. Tell a story before the person even has a moment to think if they want to watch it. You got to kind of deliver a lot of the context before the person even hits play or slides on the carousel. And that's really key. In a world today on Instagram, in literally a millisecond. And I'm using millisecond because Instagram, they just came out and announced 2 features on Reels, and that's how they're measuring plays. Play is actually considered 1 millisecond once it's actually being viewed. And there are videos that don't even get that. You have literally milliseconds to get that audience member's attention. So you got to do it the right way. And I think hooks, as we all described, is an amazing piece of content that you could put on your post, no matter what it is, and utilize.